Imagine someone who feels completely in control of their emotions. Live life without strings attached, without regrets, without worrying about who crossed your path. This person believes that each intimate choice is just a moment in time, something that dissolves as soon as it is over. Now, think about the opposite. Someone who, without understanding why, carries a strange feeling after connecting with another person. Sometimes an inexplicable sadness, other times an emptiness that is difficult to describe. It could be a subtle restlessness or even a recurring thought about someone who, theoretically, should no longer be present in your life. Why does this happen? If intimacy were just a physical act, something that starts and ends in the body, why do so many people feel like something about them has changed after sharing that moment with someone? The answer may lie in what no one teaches, something invisible but real, something that science is beginning to explore and that spirituality has known for a long time. Every intimate connection leaves marks that go beyond what the eyes can see. Many people believe that intimacy is just a momentary experience, an exchange between bodies and nothing more. But what if I told you that this vision is incomplete? That each intimate contact creates bonds that don't disappear simply because the desire to move forward exists. The truth is that each person carries a unique energy. Every experience lived, every emotion felt, every thought shapes this energy. And when two people connect in an intimate way, something much bigger happens. It's not just the body that participates, something deeper comes into play. This may seem like an abstract concept, but think of it in a simple way. If you enter a heavy environment full of tension and negativity, you feel it. You don't need anyone to say anything. You don't need to see anything happening. Your body perceives, your mind processes, your energy reacts. Now, imagine this happening inside you. When there is an intimate exchange, this energy not only meets but also mixes. You may not see it, you may not even believe it, but the truth is that each connection leaves a trace, an invisible thread that can remain for a long time. This explains why some people seem stuck in relationships that have already ended. He explains why, even after years, certain memories still have strength. He explains why there are times when, for no apparent reason, the mind returns to someone from the past. No matter how much one tries to rationalize, what happens inside is not just psychological. There is something deeper, something that deserves to be understood. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about. Intimacy is a portal, a space where two energies meet, mix, and leave marks. Some of these marks are light, fleeting, but others remain, shaping thoughts, emotions, and even the way each person sees themselves. How many times have you felt that after being with someone, your energy has changed? Maybe it was a feeling of lightness, of euphoria, but it could also have been an unexpected weight, a restlessness that is difficult to describe. This doesn't happen by chance. From now on, let's dive into what it really means to connect with someone. Let's understand how spirituality explains these bonds, how science begins to prove their consequences, and most importantly, how this awareness can transform the way each person chooses with whom to share their energy. If everything you believe about intimacy was just the tip of the iceberg, would you be ready to see what's beneath the surface? Before we get into this very deep subject, I need to ask you, have you ever stopped to think about the invisible impact that each connection leaves on you? Most people who watch the videos haven't subscribed to the channel yet, and this simple gesture makes all the difference. Sign up now and turn on notifications to continue receiving reflections that can transform the way you see relationships. And leave a like. This really helps the channel to grow and bring more content like this to you. Since ancient times, different cultures and traditions have talked about the energy that each human being carries within them. The concept that everything in the universe is made of energy is not new. Ancient civilizations already understood this in different ways. In India, for example, there are records of Vedic texts over 5,000 years old that describe the existence of energy centers in the body, known as chakras. In ancient Egypt, priests believed that a person's soul and vital energy could be influenced by contact with other people. Today, science is beginning to come closer to this vision. Modern physicists explain that all matter, including the human body, is made up of atoms in constant vibration. This means that every thought, emotion, and experience someone has an impact on the energy they emit. The human heart, for example, generates a measurable electromagnetic field, capable of influencing another person's emotional state. Research conducted by the HeartMath Institute over the past 30 years shows that this field not only exists, but also directly interacts with other people's fields, influencing the way they feel. Now think about this applied to intimacy. When two people share an intimate moment, it's not just physical contact. There is a fusion of energies, an exchange that can be subtle or intense, depending on the connection between them. This interaction does not disappear the moment the relationship ends. It can remain, influencing emotional states and even future behaviors. The ancient Taoists in China already understood this phenomenon. The philosophy of Taoism teaches that every intimate exchange involves the circulation of vital energy, the spend. If this exchange happens without awareness, the energy is dispersed, weakening both parties involved. But if it occurs in a balanced and conscious way, it can strengthen vitality and bring mental clarity. Western spiritual traditions also touch on this subject. In the Middle Ages, alchemists believed that the energy shared between two people could alter their spiritual essence. In many beliefs, the idea that one can carry fragments of energy from former partners is seen as a reason for rituals of purification and renewal. If you look at this question from a practical point of view, it makes sense. How many times have you heard someone say that after a relationship, they felt like they were no longer the same person? This happens because the energy exchanged is not disposable. What a person feels, thinks, and carries within themselves has a direct impact on those they connect with. To better understand this dynamic, imagine that each human being is like a sponge. When two people share an intimate moment, their energies mix, and they both absorb aspects of the other. If one of those involved carries deep fears, frustrations, or unresolved traumas, part of this burden can be transferred, even if unconsciously. In the same way, when someone connects with a person who transmits peace, security, and balance, this energy can also be absorbed, creating a feeling of lightness and well-being. Recent studies in the field of neuroscience show that our brain is highly influenced by the emotional states of other people. The phenomenon known as neural synchronization. It happens when two people spend time together and their brain waves begin to align. This effect, which has already been observed in several studies carried out at Princeton University, helps to explain why we feel that we are connected to some people more intensely than to others. If human interaction can generate this level of impact in everyday life, imagine how this is amplified in intimacy. What happens between two people at that moment is much more than a physical experience. It is a profound exchange that can leave invisible but noticeable marks over time. So, the big question is, how to deal with this energy exchange consciously? If intimacy is such a powerful portal of connection, how can we ensure that this exchange is healthy and positive? The answer lies in intention and awareness. Before connecting with someone, it's worth reflecting. Is this person aligned with the energy you want in your life? What does she carry inside her? How can this interaction impact your emotional and energetic balance? In many spiritual traditions, there are practices for cleansing and restoring energy after an intense connection. In Hinduism, meditation and herbal baths are used to release unwanted energetic influences. Among the indigenous peoples of South America, rituals using smoke from herbs such as sage are performed to purify the spirit. In Japan, the philosophy of Tea teaches that the practice of conscious breathing can help restore vital energy. Regardless of belief or culture, all of these traditions share a common principle. The energy we absorb can shape the way we feel, think, and act. Therefore, it is essential to choose the bonds we create wisely. Energy doesn't lie. When you connect with someone, you are making space for something bigger than just a moment. What enters your life after this exchange can strengthen or fragment your essence. And the decision to allow this exchange is ultimately in your hands. The human brain reacts in an impressive way to each experience we have. The moment two people connect intimately, there is a real chemical show happening. Substances are released, neurons activate, and new connections are created, leaving marks that can remain long after the moment experienced. Among these substances, there is one that plays a crucial role in the bond between two people. It is a hormone released in moments of closeness, such as a long hug, a deep conversation, or an act of affection. Its effect is so strong that it can create an almost immediate sense of attachment. This hormone strengthens bonds and intensifies the feeling of trust, causing the brain to register the experience as something significant. This is the reason why some connections seem unbreakable, even when logic says otherwise. In addition to this substance, there is a neurotransmitter that activates the brain's reward system. It is responsible for generating pleasure and satisfaction whenever something pleasant happens. The problem arises when this mechanism, which should be natural, starts to create patterns that make detachment difficult. The brain associates certain experiences with well-being and begins to want to repeat them, even when they don't make sense emotionally. This explains why some people feel the need to return to relationships that are no longer good for them. The brain's chemical memory can become a determining factor in these choices, making the desire to relive pleasurable sensations override common sense. This does not mean that all intimate connections result in this type of attachment, but when these exchanges happen unconsciously, the effects can be more profound than one imagines. There are times when, instead of bringing well-being, intimacy ends up generating restlessness. This sensation happens when the brain identifies that the experience lived did not bring the expected security. In this case, another substance comes into play, one that is directly linked to stress and anxiety. This substance is produced whenever there is a situation of uncertainty or emotional discomfort. When released frequently, it can lead to a feeling of exhaustion, causing mental fatigue and difficulty disconnecting from an experience that, in theory, should have already ended. This dynamic is common in relationships that seem to leave a feeling of emotional weight, even when there is no deep involvement. The brain reacts not only to what happens on a physical level, but also to the emotional charge involved in the process. If a connection occurs with someone who carries insecurities, frustrations, or traumas, some of that weight can be assimilated without the person realizing it. This process intensifies when there is repetition. Each time a similar experience happens, the brain reinforces the connections already established, making them stronger and more resistant to forgetting. This means that the more intense the exchange, the greater the impact it will leave in the long term. Science has shown that the human brain works adaptively, which means that everything that is repeated becomes more automatic. This includes habits, thought patterns, and even the way we relate to other people. Once a cycle forms, it can be difficult to break out of it, even when there is a conscious desire for change. Therefore, it is essential to understand what is happening on a deeper level. What you feel after an intimate connection is not just subjective perception, but a reflection of what is happening in your brain chemistry. Each experience creates invisible marks, which can be light and fleeting or deep and lasting. Awareness of this process can transform the way choices are made. Instead of following impulses generated by unconscious patterns, it is possible to create a new path based on what really makes sense. When the chemistry of the brain is understood, it becomes easier to make decisions that are aligned with real well-being, instead of being carried away by what happens in the moment. Intimacy goes far beyond the moment lived. The brain records, processes, and responds to every detail of the experience, building bonds that can remain even when they are no longer desired. How these connections are established can determine the impact they will have in the future. Choosing consciously does not mean giving up pleasure, but rather understanding that each choice leaves marks and that some of them can last much longer than expected. The human mind is a complex labyrinth, where each experience leaves marks that can influence the way a person feels, thinks, and acts. Intimate connection is not just a passing event. It can shape emotions, alter psychological states, and even redefine perceptions of identity. We're halfway through the video, and if this conversation is making sense to you, I want to ask you something simple, but it makes all the difference. Leave your like now and subscribe to the channel. This helps a lot to continue bringing content like this and ensures that you don't miss any important reflections. The emotional impact of a relationship is not limited to the moment in which it occurs. Often, the true consequence only reveals itself after everything is over. There are people who feel strengthened after an encounter, carrying with them a feeling of completeness and peace. Others, however, experience a void that is difficult to explain, as if a part of them had been left behind. This feeling is not an accident. Studies in the field of psychology show that bonds formed in moments of intimacy do not disappear easily. The human brain has a unique ability to associate emotions with lived experiences. When a bond is created, it becomes part of the emotional memory and can be reactivated by memories, thoughts, or even subtle stimuli, such as a familiar smell or a specific song. This mechanism may explain why some people find it difficult to move on after a relationship. Even if they rationally know that something has ended, emotional memory can keep that bond active for much longer than one imagines. Furthermore, the psychological impact of intimacy can vary depending on each individual's emotional state. For someone who is emotionally balanced, an experience can just be a moment of exchange and connection. But for someone who already carries insecurities, traumas, or unresolved wounds, the same experience can amplify these feelings, making them even more intense. There is a concept in psychology known as shared emotional regulation. It describes the way human beings influence each other emotionally. When two people interact in a deep way, they not only share words and gestures, but also emotional states. This means that if someone carries sadness, anxiety, or fear, part of this burden can be felt by the other person, even if unconsciously. This helps you understand why some connections leave such a strong impact. It's not just about the moment lived, but about what was absorbed during that moment. When an exchange occurs without awareness, one can end up carrying emotions that do not originally belong to oneself. Furthermore, there is another important factor: self-esteem. The way a person sees themselves can be influenced by the connections they make. Healthy relationships tend to reinforce a positive perception of oneself, promoting confidence and well-being. But when a connection happens in a context of insecurity, it can have the opposite effect, leaving marks that affect self-image and self-worth. This phenomenon is visible in people who, after multiple unresolved experiences, begin to question their own worth. They may feel fragmented, confused, or even emotionally exhausted, as if each encounter has taken a part of them. Psychology also explores the concept of somatic memory, which suggests that intense emotions are not only stored in the mind, but also in the body. Some people report that, after certain encounters, they felt physical changes, such as tiredness, muscle tension, or even changes in sleep. This occurs because the nervous system responds to emotional stimuli, registering them in ways that go beyond immediate awareness. The connection between body and mind is undeniable. What affects a person emotionally can also affect their physical health. The stress generated by unresolved relationships can result in symptoms such as fatigue, headaches, and difficulty relaxing. When an experience leaves a negative impact, the organism can continue reacting to it for a long time, even if the mind tries to move on. So, how to avoid these effects? The answer lies in awareness and self-knowledge. By understanding how connections influence emotional state, it becomes possible to make decisions that are more aligned with one's own well-being. Building relationships based on respect, trust, and emotional balance can make all the difference in the way these experiences are lived. Reflecting before connecting with someone does not mean giving up pleasure or spontaneity, but rather choosing experiences that contribute to growth and inner harmony. When a connection is made consciously, it not only strengthens emotional bonds, but also contributes to a state of fulfillment that is reflected in all areas of life. The existence of invisible bonds is something that many people notice, but few truly understand. These are connections that do not depend on time, physical proximity, or rational logic. Sometimes, a simple thought is enough for someone's presence to come back to mind with unexpected intensity. Other times, a memory appears out of nowhere, filled with sensations that seem as real as the moment they were experienced. These ties are no coincidence. The human mind not only stores memories, but also records emotions and energies associated with each experience. When a connection is created between two people, it does not disappear easily, as it is not just about words or gestures. Something deeper is marked, forming a bond that can persist even when physical interaction no longer exists. This may explain why some relationships leave marks that are difficult to erase. Some people move on with their lives, change their routine, discover new realities, but still feel that something of that bond remains. In many cases, it is not even a conscious desire to relive the experience, but rather an inexplicable feeling that that connection still exists, even if in a subtle way. Neuroscience suggests this is related to how the brain works. When a moment of great emotional impact occurs, whether positive or negative, it activates areas responsible for effective memory. This activation strengthens neural connections, making that memory more resistant to time. Therefore, there are situations in which a person feels that they are trapped in a bond that should have already been undone. This is because these connections are not only based on facts, but also on the emotional energy that was shared. Even if the relationship has ended rationally, the emotional charge may remain, creating the feeling that the bond still exists. The spiritual tradition of different cultures has talked about this for centuries. In ancient Eastern philosophies, it is believed that every exchange of energy between two people creates an invisible thread that can remain connected for a long time. These energetic threads can be light and positive, bringing good memories and feelings of peace, but they can also be dense and heavy, carrying feelings that make letting go difficult. Science also investigates the influence of memories on the emotional state. A study published in the Journal of Neuroscience showed that the brain not only relives memories, but also reactivates the emotions felt at that moment. This means that, when remembering an intense experience, the mind can trigger reactions similar to those that occurred in the past, as if it were reliving that situation. This explains why some people have difficulty getting over certain connections. Even when there is a conscious effort to move forward, the brain continues to bring up fragments of that relationship. This happens because the emotional impact of some interactions goes beyond the conscious, becoming part of deep memory. The energy shared in a moment of connection can remain in different forms. Some people feel this as a slight homesickness. Others notice changes in mood for no apparent reason. In some cases, there is a feeling of emotional heaviness, a tiredness that seems to have no explanation. This occurs because, when connecting deeply with another person, the exchange of energies does not end immediately. Depending on the strength of the bond, it may take time for this energy to be processed and released. Therefore, some cultures have developed rituals to close energetic bonds, helping the individual to restore their balance. In many traditions, practices such as meditation, reflective writing, and symbolic rituals are used to dissolve these connections. The act of recognizing the existence of a bond is already a fundamental step towards undoing it. When an experience is not ignored, but understood and given new meaning, its weight tends to decrease, allowing the person to move forward in a lighter way. Some people feel that after an intense exchange, their energy has changed. Some perceive this as a sense of growth, while others feel drained, as if they have lost something of themselves. This shows that each interaction has a unique effect, and that the connections created are not only physical, but also emotional and energetic. When someone becomes aware of these bonds, they begin to see their relationships in a different way. Instead of acting impulsively, start reflecting on the type of energy you want to exchange and the impact that each connection can have. This does not mean avoiding experiences, but rather living them in a more present way, understanding that each bond leaves a mark. Not every connection needs to last forever. Some are just fleeting. but they still have meaning. The most important thing is to understand that each bond has an impact, and that the way we deal with them can determine how much these experiences will influence our path. The way a person chooses to share their energy directly influences their emotional, mental, and even physical health. Often, intimate connections are treated as momentary experiences without a deeper look at the consequences that may arise in the long term. However, understanding the effects of these exchanges can be the first step towards protecting your own essence and building healthier relationships. Awareness of your own emotions is a powerful tool. When a person understands their own feelings and patterns, they start to make choices that are more aligned with what they really want. Many bonds are created without reflection, driven by the desire of the moment, without considering the impact they will have later. This lack of perception can result in experiences that, instead of bringing satisfaction, generate confusion, exhaustion, and even a separation from one's own identity. The first aspect of self-protection is recognizing one's own worth. When someone sees themselves as a unique being, with an energy that deserves to be respected and preserved, they begin to act differently in their relationships. This does not mean closing off or avoiding connections, but rather establishing a level of awareness that allows you to distinguish enriching experiences from those that only drain vitality. Often, signs that a connection is not positive appear in subtle ways. Feelings of inexplicable tiredness, sudden lack of motivation, or a change in mood for no apparent reason may be signs that the energy exchange has not been balanced. When someone gets involved with another person who carries unresolved anxieties, resentments, or destructive patterns, they may end up absorbing part of that burden without realizing it. To avoid this type of impact, it is essential to develop a sense of discernment. Observing how you feel after an interaction is one of the most effective ways to understand whether that exchange was positive or whether it left a trail of emotional exhaustion. The body and mind always send signals, and ignoring them can lead to wear cycles that could be avoided. Another important aspect of energy protection is setting limits. Knowing how far you want to go, what you are willing to accept, and what does not match what you are looking for are essential elements for maintaining a balanced relationship. Establishing clear limits does not mean rejecting others, but respecting yourself and ensuring that each experience is lived consciously. The practice of self-knowledge also plays a central role in this process. When a person gets to know themselves, they begin to identify repetitive patterns that may be impacting their life without them realizing it. Some people feel constantly drawn into connections that leave them emotionally drained, while others indulge in connections that don't bring any kind of growth. Understanding these patterns is the first step to breaking them and building healthier relationships. Choosing who you share intimate moments with can have a profound effect on your individual journey. Some connections can strengthen, bring clarity, and boost personal evolution. Others, on the other hand, can create emotional blocks, fuel insecurities, and make it difficult to build a balanced life. Energy protection can also be strengthened through simple but effective practices. Taking care of your own well-being, taking moments to reflect on your feelings, and looking for ways to reconnect with yourself are ways to restore balance and prevent external energies from affecting inner stability. Additionally, some cultures and traditions teach methods for clearing energy after an intense exchange. Meditation, contact with nature, herbal baths, and even the act of writing about your own emotions are practices that help to release what no longer belongs to the present. These small habits can make a big difference in the way each person deals with the bonds created throughout their lives. Awareness in intimacy does not mean avoiding experiences or moving away from human contact. On the contrary, it allows each connection to be experienced with more presence and meaning. When you understand the impact of these exchanges, it becomes easier to make choices that bring growth instead of carrying brands that do not contribute to personal evolution. The most important thing is to remember that each experience leaves a record, whether light or deep. How each person chooses to connect with others can determine not only the quality of their relationships, but also how they feel about themselves. Personal energy is one of the most precious assets that exist, and protecting it means taking care of your own essence, ensuring that each moment lived is a reflection of what you really want to build. The way each person chooses to connect with others has a much greater impact than you might think. The exchanges that take place during a moment of intimacy are not just physical, but carry emotions, memories, and energies that can remain for a long time. What seemed like just an instant can in fact leave marks that shape thoughts, feelings, and even the perception of identity. If all experiences leave traces, the big question is, what kind of energy do you want to carry with you? Not all connections strengthen, not all bring growth. Some leave a feeling of lightness, while others create an invisible weight that manifests itself in different ways. True freedom is in conscience. Choosing who to engage with is not about restrictions, but about recognizing your own value and understanding that every exchange has an impact. When there is clarity about what you want and the type of energy you want to attract, decisions begin to be guided by something much deeper than a momentary desire. Many people live automatically, without realizing the effect of the choices they make. They continue to get involved in relationships that are exhausting, repeating patterns that drain, and carrying fragments of stories that should have already been left behind. But when you wake up to this reality, everything changes. Perception expands, and decisions begin to be made with intention, self-respect, and awareness. The past cannot be changed, but the present is in your hands. Each choice made from now on defines what will be carried forward. The energy you share with others is also the energy you cultivate within yourself. If each experience shapes the journey, may this journey be made wisely. If each connection leaves a mark, may these marks be of growth. And if energy is a reflection of what you allow into your own life, may it be protected and valued as the most precious asset there is. Now the question is, what type of energy do you want to carry with you from today? If this message made sense to you, don't leave without leaving a like and subscribing to the channel. This helps a lot to continue bringing content that really makes a difference. And if you want to deepen this knowledge even further, watch the next video that is appearing on the screen now. I'm sure it will open up your perception of this topic even further. See you there.